on today's StoryBeat.
Once I commit, the discipline's easy. And I think people have a real hard time trying to put discipline before commitment, and you're screwed because you have to be committed first. And then the discipline's easy. But if you're not committed, then you're always going to battle discipline.
This is StoryBeat with Steve Cuden, a podcast for the creative mind. StoryBeat explores how masters of creativity develop and produce brilliant works that people everywhere love and admire. So join us as we discover how talented creators find success in the worlds of imagination and entertainment. Here now is your host, Steve Cuden.
Thanks for joining us on StoryBeat. We're coming to you from the Steel City, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. My guest today, Michael Emanuel, is an award-winning actor, producer, writer, and director with hundreds of TV, film, and commercial credits on his resume. Michael has worked alongside such Hollywood luminaries as William Freidkin, Wolfgang Peterson, Armand Mastroianni, Nick Nolte, Dustin Hoffman, Harrison Ford, Rene Russo, and Alfre Woodard, just to name a few. The quintessential everyman, Michael has guest starred on numerous TV shows, including ER, The Nine, Desperate Housewives, Malcolm in the Middle, Everybody Hates Chris, and Monk. One of the most recognizable faces on TV, Michael is that guy in hundreds of memorable national commercials. His work has helped sell products for DHL, SBC, Century 21, Sears, Snickers, Healthy Choice, McDonald's, K Jewelers, AT&T, Disney, Tylenol, GM, Saturn, Comcast, American Airlines, HUD, and many others. In 2006, Michael started his own production company, Canal Street Films, which quickly became an active force in the independent film community. Canal Street's first feature, the suspenseful psychological thriller The Uninvited, stars Marguerite Moreau, Brittany Curran, and Colin Hay. He also produced Freestyle, starring High School Musical leading man Corbin Blue, and Maneater, the Native American-inspired horror thriller starring Dean Cain, which Michael also wrote and directed. Most recently, Michael wrote and produced and directed Scary or Die, starring Corbin Bleu and horror icon Bill Oberst Jr. Michael is also well known for starring in and co-producing the modern horror cult classic Lucky, which, for the record, was written and co-produced by the late, great Steve Sustarsic and co-produced and directed by your humble host. That would be me. So for all of those reasons and many more, I'm delighted to have my longtime friend, the multi-talented Michael Emanuel, as my guest on StoryBeat today. Michael, welcome to the show.
Hey, Steve, it's so funny because hearing all that, I've never actually heard anyone say that. It does sound so douchey, but okay.
Well, I would submit that your douchey career made you some money, so that's a good thing.
Yeah, my least favorite part of the business.
So
right?
Let's go back in time. What is it that got you interested in being in the acting business to start? Where did that come from? Where did that begin?
Well, a long time ago, in high school, I went to an all-boy Catholic school called St. Joseph's, which is now actually closing. We just heard that it was closing. So, and right across the football field was an all-girl Catholic school called Immaculate Heart of Mary. So the only way, and this is true, the only way to meet girls was to take a class over at Immaculate Heart of Mary, because, you know, I'm stuck all day with dudes. And they had an acting class. And I was like, you know, a dopey, overweight kid, and shy, and I was like, well, I'll go take an acting class because at least there'll be some girls in there. So that was the impetus. And so I took this acting class, and they were doing a play, The Man Who Came to Dinner. Mm-hmm. And I auditioned for it. I didn't even want to, but the teacher, I just auditioned for it. So I auditioned for it, and I got cast as Sheldon Whitehouse.
Sheridan Whiteside, I believe.
He's a congressman, I think.
Yes.
Sheridan Whiteside. Oh my God. Yeah, Sheridan Whiteside. So I got cast as the father of the house, and I immediately fell into being a character actor.
And that got into your bloodstream at that point, yeah?
Yeah, because I didn't have to be, I had like zero self-esteem, and I just could lose myself in a role and not have to be stuck with, fat, dopey Mike.
So you were a teenager at this point?
Yeah, I was probably, I was the Lee J. Cobb of St. Joseph's High School. 16 years old. 16 or 17 years old playing a 50-year-old man. Yeah.
The Lee J. Cobb. So then who did you look up to in those days in terms of career? Who did you look out in the world and go, I would really like to have something going on in my life like that person?
Gosh, at that time, nobody in terms of career, because that wasn't even on the radar. But I did look up. There were actors that I identified with, and the actors that I really liked. And one of my greatest joys I was a film freak as a kid.
Hmm.
I watched a lot of television, by myself. But when TV Guide would come out every week, I would pore over it and look at the names, And this was in the late '60s, early '70s. So
Right.
I would read names, and I watched all the old black and white movies, and I loved film noir, and I loved, Richard Widmark, and I loved Spencer Tracy, and I loved Robert Mitchum, and all those kind of guys that play those roles. And so those were the actors that I most identified with. I identified with kind of charactery,
Edgy guys.
kind of edgy, like not, imperfect heroes, I guess.
Well, those are the most interesting to watch for sure.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, the ones that are not flawed in some way are not that compelling. So it's always good when the character has those kinds of quirky flaws.
Yeah.
Um,
Absolutely.
so at what point did you think to yourself, well, maybe I should try doing more of this, maybe even professionally?
So I'll give you the kind of how this works chronologically. So high school, I did a couple plays in high school, and and then I auditioned for a play. There was another play, and so the first play I did, I loved, and then I wanted to do more, and then I auditioned and I was in a couple other plays, but never like the leading man, always just kind of a supporting, actor. But I auditioned for a play when I was a senior, and it's a funny story. The director of the play, who was also a teacher at the school, came up to me and said, "Look, you were by far the best actor for this role, but I'm not going to give it to you," he said, "because you're not really serious about the work. I'm going to give it to this other guy. I won't mention his name. Not that he's ever even around here." But I kind of look back at that, and it really upset me, because his looking at me as not being serious about the work. I always want to make the work fun. I won't do anything if it's not fun and enjoyable. And I took a very easygoing approach to the work. It had nothing to do. I was as serious as a heart attack about the work, and always have been. But I wasn't angsty about the work, and I've never been angsty about the work. But I do like to have fun, and I do like to enjoy myself. And so he gave it to this other guy who got the lead role. And at the time, I was kind of devastated by it, because here's somebody saying you're really good, but you're not getting it.
Mm-hmm.
And the other guy never became an actor. And then I kind of had like a really nice little career as an actor. So I thought, so don't listen to those people.
Did you feel like because he said that to you, you were going to prove him wrong?
No, I just no, I didn't have any of that kind of gumption at the time. So I get out of high school. I fumbled around in college, and quit college and worked full time, and then went back to school. And it was when I went back to school that I took a theater class, because it had been years since I'd done any theater. And so I took this class, and the teacher I was just doing it for credit. I wasn't thinking about being in a play or anything.
Right.
The teacher came up to me, and her name was Jody Briggs. I'm pretty sure she's probably passed away. She was older then. And she pulled me aside, and she said, you should audition for this play. You have a real ability to do this kind of work. And as somebody, it's funny how like impactful words from a teacher can have, a good teacher.
No kidding.
The first time anyone kind of said something that gave me, that kind of believed in me.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, really, me? I can do this kind of work? So I did, and I got in that play, and then I did a bunch of other plays, and then in that, it was a junior college too, and in that school I met another director named Marju Harlick, who cast me in another play, and she was the first person that kind of suggested that I do this professionally. And I was 24 years old. I never in a million years, this is in Chicago, never in a million years did I think, oh, I want to be an actor. I was in the corporate world. I was just doing this at night for fun.
Mm-hmm.
But it lit a little fire, and it gave me a spark, and it was like, really, I could do this professionally. And I was dumb enough to believe her, and I just went, okay, I'm going to do it professionally. So I wasn't really thrilled with my job. I wasn't really thrilled living in Chicago. The weather's awful. I mean, I love the food and my family and all that stuff, but I wanted to get out of there.
Right.
So I was like, you know what, I'm going to go to New York, and just Steve, I didn't go to film school. I had nobody I could like rely on. I was just flying by the seat of my pants. And so
as do most people in the business when they start.
Yeah. And so the American Academy of Dramatic Arts was having auditions for a summer program
In New York.
In New York. Well, hold that for thought, but I thought it was just New York.
Right.
So I had to prepare a monologue, and I had a monologue. I did a monologue from Glengarry Glen Ross, one of my favorite plays, and fits my personality too. So I go in there, and it was kind of a big deal at the time. So I go in there, and they called me up and said, okay, we want you to come to the summer program, and you can come to New York, Manhattan, or you can go to California. And I'm like, let me think. And I wasn't conferring with anybody about this. I was just like, here's my decision. New York, cold. California, warm. F it, I'm going to California. So
your whole career is based on a weather decision?
No, my whole career is based on F it, quite frankly. The majority of the decisions I make in my life come down to, oh, what the F? Yes, a weather decision. They're all kind of basic caveman-y type of things.
About how old are you at this point? You in your 20s?
28 years old.
Oh, wow. So you'd been around living for a little while. It wasn't like you were 21.
I had a really good job. I was making a lot of money. I had a company car. I had a big staff, and I was miserable. And when I said I'm going to California to be an actor, everybody looked at me like I was out of my gourd. I mean, up to that point, I had done theater in Chicago, not a ton. I did some industrial. You may remember my star turn as Salmonella in the industrial video about the handling of fresh meat and fish. So I said, screw it. So I came to California on July 8th, 1988. I had Cubs tickets to first light game at Wrigley Field that I sold, and that game got rained out. And when the plane was leaving, I could see it in my mind's eye right now as the plane's landing I had never been here before. I didn't know anybody here. The academy was in Pasadena. I didn't know Pasadena from Torrance. I was like complete newbie. Right. But as the plane's coming down, and it was a Saturday night, and you know what LA looks like in the summertime as the sun's going down and the haze over the city, it's kind of magical, and the twinkling of all the lights here. And I was like, I am never leaving. So I landed. And I went to the academy. It was a 12-week program. I was like, well, I'm not going, people back home were like, and I didn't tell people that I was staying here, even though in my head I knew I was never going back. Oh, so are you coming back? And I was like, no, I'm going to stay for a little while and see, if I can get some work. So I was lucky enough to meet there was a teacher at the academy. I can't think of her name, but she pulled me aside one day as well and said, hey, if you're thinking about staying here, I don't do this. I don't recommend acting coaches for people, but there's a guy who I think you would really respond to. There's an acting coach, an old acting coach. And that was a pivotal conversation, really pivotal. Looking back on it, it was, maybe the most important thing at the time, because I was kind of just floundering on my own. And she said, you should go meet Harry Mastroianni.
Harry Mastroianni, sure.
Yeah, old Greek guy. From New York, from Pittsburgh, actually.
Yeah. I've met Harry.
Yeah, Harry's he's a delight, and still, I haven't talked to him in a couple of years, but he's in his early 90s and still teaching. At least he was before the pandemic, and going strong. So I met Harry, and that kind of gave me some foundation, and that was 1988. And I floundered for 5 years, just trying to figure out stuff. I found improvisational comedy. I did a little bit in Chicago at Second City, not Second City downtown, the one out in the suburbs.
Right.
I took some workshops there and kind of liked it, but wasn't quite sure. But then I found improv here, and I started working with an improv group here, not making any money, but I met some of my greatest friends that I still have, and I met my wife there. And then I spent a short time at the Groundlings, but I still hadn't broken through professionally making any money as an actor.
But you knew you had some chops for comedy, which is not always true.
I knew early on I had some chops for playing make-believe, whether it was comedy or drama but I like it, but comedy and improvisational comedy was fun. Improvisational drama is also really fun too, and
sure.
And can be impactful.
Sure.
But, hey, that was magic for me because, through that, random conversation, I met, a great acting coach that reinforced some of my natural thoughts and abilities. and subsequently hanging around, I got into improv, and I met my wife, and I met some of my great friends that I'm still friends with today.
So your formal training, such that it is from the academy and from personal trainers or teachers, rather than going to a university.
No, for sure. And yeah.
Did you continue with your studies after that?
Well, I stayed with Harry for quite a few years. Didn't work professionally though. I really struggled, and I just couldn't quite, but I never thought, oh, I'm going to quit. Like, I saw actors come and go by the wayside, and like amazing actors, and especially in, like some of the most amazing actors I've ever seen that nobody has ever heard of.
Right,
I
sure.
saw on stage in Harry's class.
Sure.
But yeah, if you ask, I look at myself as not having any formal training, really. I had some kind of guidance along the way that kind of kept me on the straight and narrow. But, my approach to my work has always been more of a visceral approach and more of an imaginative approach than an intellectual approach.
Sure. Well, we're going to get into the process here, in fact, right now, in terms of how you sort of do what you do, because like you say, unlike many actors, you didn't go through an academic process.
Oh God, I would have killed myself if it was an academic process. I wouldn't have lasted. No.
All right, so let's go to among the earliest things that an actor will do.
Yeah.
You've certainly been through your share of auditions over time.
Oh,
What's your philosophy toward auditioning? How do you prepare? What do you think about?
Auditioning is not the same as obviously working, and it's a whole kind of annoying process. Auditioning is not, you have to enjoy it at the time, or you're never getting the gig. But you can't be thinking about getting the gig, because you're then for sure you're never getting the gig.
Right.
So you kind of have to approach it the same way you do the work. You have to do your homework, and whether it's whether it's some schmuck selling mayonnaise or a guy who's cracking a safe at 2 a.m. in a bank. It's the same for me. It's always been the same process of doing my homework before I get to the set or before I get to the room, and being able to trust that I've got the foundation built through my imagination to be able to pretend that I am that person that the people who are sitting across the room from me in this very unnatural situation, I'm able to behave naturally under very, very unnatural circumstances.
So let's for the listeners who don't know, let's take us through that for a moment. So when you go into audition, you're going into frequently a blank room that doesn't have any, might have a couple chairs and a table in it, or and it'll be very bleak usually. There's nothing fancy about it, and you have to pretend to be some character in something.
Correct.
So when you say you need to do your work, I know you're saying you're in your imagination, but what does that mean? What is your work? What are you doing?
Well, it's homework. It's not here work. It's work that I've done before I've ever walked into that sterile, awful room, and it can be awful. And so you really need to have built that foundation of your homework, which I like to call it. And so, for instance, if I have to go in and pretend that I'm I don't know, pick a scenario, I don't have any of that stuff. All I have, like you said, I got a wall. I got a crabby casting assistant who could care less about me. Sometimes there's a casting director in there. On the first call, there's never a director or a producer or anyone that can say yes. Just people that can say no.
Right.
They're the ones that are the gatekeepers, are the people that can say no. So
you don't know exactly what they're looking for either.
And I know, because that's a fool's errand. I think you can't even. I could care less at that point. I have to just kind of do my stuff and put it out. So I spend when I was the most comfortable, and when I think I did my best work, I spent the most time outside of the set and outside of the audition doing my homework, and that is literally sitting in a room. It's not sexy. It's not glamorous. It can be quite boring, quite mundane. It's apparently very healthy for you. But sitting in a room, imagining my circumstances of whatever that scene is. And it's like if I told you, Steve, there's a serial killer under your bed. You don't believe me, right? There's no serial. There's no serial killer. But if I told you for the next 3 weeks, I want you to spend 8 hours a day, every day of the week, imagining what it would be like to wake up and see that there's a serial killer under the bed and he's trying to kill you. and he's going to come out from under the bed, and he's going to choke you, and he's going to strangle you. And if that's what you think about for the next 3 weeks, guess what? You're going to have that mindset so that you can pretend like there's a serial killer under your bed. You've built that foundation through your imaginative process.
We'll get to Lucky in a bit.
You know what I mean? So it's
I do.
That's a drastic kind of scenario, but it's, whether it's 8 weeks or 8 minutes or 8 months or 8 hours or 8 days, whatever, you have to take that time to imagine your situation so that when they say action, you are able to play that. You're able to, and play is my favorite word because that's what it is. And that's what it was for me when that jackass teacher in high school said, you didn't take it serious. Well, I was playing,
Right.
Perform, that always bothered me. The name perform automatically puts me in a mindset I have to perform something. No, I'm not performing. I'm playing. I'm playing Othello. I'm playing, Gacy. I'm playing, it's play, right?
As you've gone out on various auditions over time, as you say, you've gone to thousands of them. I'm imagining that there have been more than a few of those where you didn't have that much time to prepare. You didn't have days or hours. You might have had overnight. You might have gotten
Yes.
a call at 8 o'clock on a night, and you're supposed to go in at 10 o'clock the next morning.
That's right.
So therefore your homework, as you call it, now gets truncated by time.
It's okay. And you can't think of it like you have to submit to what you have. And we as human beings have, a bottomless reservoir of imaginative powers.
Mm-hmm.
We did it as kids. We played cops and robbers and cowboys and Indians. And we did it as kids. We played make-believe as kids. And that's really all it is. So even if it's only, you have instances as an actor where you go and you read for something like, you know what, they want to see you as this. Here's the sides. Go take a look at the sides. Now you got a few minutes to look at it. You can't be freaking about, oh my God, I don't have enough time to prepare. No, I have what I have, and I'm going to do the best I can.
It's a little bit like golf. You got to play it as it lays.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So sorry.
And it might not be subjective. That's the hardest thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is hard to not be subjective.
For sure.
Yeah. So yeah. So all right. So once you've landed a gig, you've booked a role.
Yeah.
Whether it's in a commercial, which is going to be a relatively short-term proposition, versus a part in a TV series where you're on for weeks.
Yes.
Once you've landed that gig, aside from reading the script that you're going to portray or you're going to play, as you say, in that part, what is the first thing you do aside from reading it? What do you start to do? Just go through the same mental process or something else?
Yeah, I mean, the script's is my roadmap, and that's you kind of you start to paint the house and the fence and you start to color the trees and you start to fill in the backgrounds in your imagination. So the script is kind of everything I need is in the script.
Do you break every script down?
I don't even like using that word. I guess I do, but like,
do you put notes in the script?
Sometimes I do. Yeah. I never highlight things ever highlight. I've never highlighted a script, sides, anything ever in my life.
Mm-hmm. So you immediately glom straight onto whatever your role is. It just comes to you.
Yeah. Well, it doesn't necessarily it just depends on the story, whether or not it's, whether or not you have to do a lot of homework or not as much homework. It just depends. To come into communion with the material depends on the material.
Mm-hmm. Do you think of you were known for quite some time for doing many, many, many commercials, as we mentioned in the bio at the top. Were each of those parts given the same kind of character thoughts?
Yeah, for sure. And as crazy as it sounds, I give my process is exactly the same for whatever medium I have ever worked in, whether it was in theater, whether it was in commercials, whether it was in television, whether it was in film, or it's the exact same process. It's just relative.
It's relative in terms of probably a quantity.
Exactly. Yeah.
And perhaps the speed with which you have to do it.
Exactly. Yes.
Right. So, okay. So, would you say that you work the same today? If you booked a gig today, you would work at it in the same way you did when you first started, or have you learned anything over time that's
No,
changed the way you do it?
No, I think the process is natural law. I don't think that process changes. I think it's natural law. I think that, you become more facile at doing it. Look, it's not easy. It's not at all easy. And I'm social. Well, so, going off in a room by myself for hours and hours is not necessarily appealing thought. I like being around stuff. I like being around action. And it's, it very well may be my fatal flaw in terms of, having a bigger career in film. Because I wasn't willing to do the work. There were instances in my career as an actor when I realized, you know what, I'm not willing to do the work. Some people get away with it without doing it, and there's all, I don't really care how actors get to wherever they need to get to be able to do their work. Yeah, I know for sure that there were instances where I just wasn't willing to put the work in.
Well, there are, a lot of it is luck, because you're going to be cast for a part. You're stuck with the way that you look one way or the other.
Yes.
You're probably not going to play the Harrison Ford part.
No.
But there is a huge range that you can play. And so that's your range. That's where you fit into the world, because casting is in very large part physical, not necessarily your talent or ability.
Yeah, you have no control if, like, you go into a room and the one of the producers, you remind her of some guy that she dated that she hated when she was 27. I mean, and you have no control over that. And that's why, I've never asked. I've had agents offer and managers offer, but I never asked for feedback after auditions, because I can't do anything about it. It'll make you crazy. I can't control. It's like, I painted the painting. Either it was purchased or it wasn't purchased. I'm not going to go back and add seagulls,
Well, you clearly had, you made a lot of sales.
I did. Yeah, I did. But I was resilient and worked on my resiliency early on to be able to withstand the kind of, because we lose 90% of the time as an actor. You're rejected the majority of the time. You're rejected.
I think it's even worse for writers.
Yeah, I'm sure. And so you have to be able to, because you lose your mind, you have to be able to handle rejection at the same way you have to be able to handle accolades and not be too swayed by either of them.
You to a large extent, you have to be able to want it. You've got to be able to want to continue to do it, because if you lose that drive as a writer, producer, director, actor, it doesn't matter. If you lose that drive, suddenly you just stop focusing on it and it goes away.
Yes. It has to be the most important thing. When I was working all the time as an actor, outside of my family, there was nothing more important. Nothing. Zero. I would not, and it's a mindset, it's a state of mind. I would not hesitate. I would get a call on a Friday afternoon to drive down to the West Side for a 6:30 last minute audition. And I would be like, okay, jump in my car and go. I got out of, I live in Simi Valley, and we had horrible fires. Like, we do have fires all the time. But like 15 years ago, I remember specifically, they shut Simi Valley down because, there's one road in and one road out.
Yes.
Well, we were surrounded by fires. But if you remember Black Canyon, I don't know if you remember Black Canyon. It goes up through Woolsey Road. It's a little 2-lane road. Nobody uses it except like maybe, drug runners and whatever. So I get a call from my agents about an audition, and I'm like, shit, I'm surrounded by fires. But I figured out a way to get out of here, and I went, and it took me 8 hours to get back home because I had to wait almost to the next morning before they opened up the highways here till the fires blew through. But it has to be the most important thing to you. It can't be a second thought. It can't be hindsight. It has to be, you have to be really committed. It's 99% perspiration, 1% inspiration.
Absolutely. What tricks or techniques do you use for memorization?
I don't use any tricks or techniques. I can't think about the words themselves. I have to think about the message behind the words, and then the words come easy, if that makes sense. So I can't think of, if the line is, hey, you need to go out there right now and fetch that hay, or I don't know, whatever, fetch that milk. I can't think about that. I have to think about who's the person that's saying that to me? Oh, it's Ma. We're down on the farm, and and people are probably sitting at the dinner table or we're breakfast table waiting for breakfast, and we don't have any milk in the house. And so I think of kind of like, that's why I said I like fill in the blanks all around that, and I do it on a granular level, and then I open it up from there. So the words are kind of subservient to everything else that's behind the words. It doesn't matter what the words are, all the stuff that's behind them. And then once I have that filled in, the word's easy. Hey, go fetch that milk. You know what I mean? Whatever that is. So I never did. I shouldn't say never did. Early on, I tried like where you write things over and over again, and it just becomes too robotic and too unnatural, and saying them over out loud. I never say lines out loud, ever.
Really? You never?
Never. Always in my head.
That's interesting.
Never said them out loud. I don't want to hear myself. I don't even want to see myself. So I want my work to be I want it to be as natural and transparent as possible. And if I say a line over and over again, it's going to sound robotic and unnatural.
So one of the principal things that most actors look for is to be present and in the moment while doing what they're doing.
Yeah.
Is that something that you consider, or is it just happening?
And forgive me that there's a lot. By the way, this is the longest I've ever talked about acting so far.
That's good.
Yeah. I don't like it. I love you, Steve. I don't like talking about it.
We'll get off it shortly.
No, it's okay. I don't even know what that means, honestly. I try not to think of things like that. I try not to think of being in the moment. It's like it's already inherent to we're together, me and you, and we're in this sandbox and we're pretending we're doing something. So
except here's where I ask the question. It's important for listeners to know that this is your way of coming at it.
Yes.
Certainly when you're doing a part for a movie or TV show or commercial, you are being asked usually to do the exact same thing over and over and over again, sometimes endlessly from many different angles, camera angles.
Yes.
And so you've got to give that thing that you did, you don't want to call it a performance, but whatever it is that you gave in doing this interaction between other actors, or sometimes in a commercial by yourself. Yeah. You have to do it repeatedly. Yeah. So you've got to remain somewhat, for lack of a better word, fresh, or like you're doing it for the first time.
Fresh is a good word. Yeah. And it's kind of taken a moment. I can tell you a little anecdote if you want. I always took a moment. I took time and to kind of like, there's homework and there's here work. Right. So I like to call that that's my work before you say action, which when I worked as a director, I never said action. I always would say, just go when you're ready. I just never liked saying action. So I would take that moment to kind of recalibrate things and get myself back into that place again. So that it is fresh to me, because if it's fresh to me, then of course it'll be fresh to you. So I knew Djimon Hounsou, amazing actor, was doing what was the Spielberg movie about the slave trade? Amistad. And he didn't work much professionally when he got that role. And Spielberg said action. And it was a scene that he was in, and it was, according to people on the set, it was like forever. He wasn't saying anything. He was just waiting and waiting and waiting. And then he started. He was doing his here work. He was waiting till he had gotten himself into a place, like you say, in the moment or whatever. But he was doing his work to prepare himself to be able to pretend that he was the slave.
So part of that, I'm gonna guess, is that sets are notoriously busy, distracting places, and then suddenly everybody goes quiet so that you can shoot whatever you're shooting. and immediately at the end of that shot, everything gets busy and noisy again.
Yeah.
So how do you keep that distraction from affecting you?
It's you have to be ballsy and not care about it. You have to be like, like Jaimin Hansu. He didn't give a shit who was waiting. He wasn't ready, and he was waiting. And you hear stories, you hear horror stories about I love Tom Hardy. I think he's amazing, but I've also heard some that he's difficult, really difficult. But what does that mean, difficult? Well, he works. He's not ready. When he's ready, he's ready. So you kind of gotta wait. He's doing his work. At least that's my understanding.
So when you're working with other actors, is there anything that you're anticipating or wanting from them?
No, just a playfulness, just a mindset that they're willing to kind of let go of their concerns about what they look like or where the lights are or blah blah blah. All the kind of things that are the peripheral stuff that get in the way of the kind of the process of make believe. So, and sometimes a lot of times you get it, a lot of times you don't, and you can't really control that. So you do have to be prepared that you may get a lot or you may get nothing.
Right. So you're going to stay within yourself at all times anyway.
Yeah, have to.
Yeah, because otherwise, if you're not getting it from them, you still have to step up and have your. I'm trying to avoid the word performance. But,
okay, I'm just being a weirdo with that.
But you have to still step up and give 100% of what it is that you give.
Yeah, you still have to do your work. Yeah.
Let's talk about career a little bit. Overall career.
Yes.
You've had a career that's lasted quite a while.
Yeah.
So how do you conduct the life in the business of being an actor? What is it that you think about? Are you constantly looking for parts? Or are you working on helping your agent find things for you? What is it that you do? What do you do from your side in the business of being an actor?
Yeah, I'm working the business end of the business all the time. I'm talking to my agents, I'm reading scripts, I'm finding out what's going on in town, I'm looking at breakdowns, I'm trying to get into the room. It's a constant hustle. I can really hustle. I hustle, I'm old now, but I still hustle. And I'll outwork most people. Like just from a pure, blue collar pipe fitter kind of mentality, I'll work harder. I have an affinity for work. I'm in the zombie apocalypse, you probably want to be on my back.
Because you're going to keep going one way or the other.
Yeah. Look, if you tell me to go kill the dragon, I'm either killing the effing dragon or I'm dying trying. And that's kind of been, and that's been kind of a philosophy of life for me. It's like, I'll keep going, because you don't lose until you quit.
Well, that's for sure. I mean, the old adage is the only people who don't succeed in show business are the ones that give up.
Oh, yeah, that's great. I've never heard that before.
So obviously you've had lots of work, but you've also had lots of downtime, lots of in between. How do you handle the in between? What do you do?
I've been really fortunate in that when I worked, let's just say that I had a 25-year run. I worked all the time. And if I wasn't working, I was auditioning. And we'll probably talk about more of this later on, but I also, towards the end of my career, the last 5 to 10 years of my career, I went to the other side of the camera and started producing and directing and writing for film. And so those are things that are all consuming. You're, as a producer, you're working all the time, and as a writer, writers write.
Well, that's a very good segue. So let's get into directing and producing, which you've done a fair amount of. What you've also written scripts. That's a whole other conversation. I think we might have on another day, but not today, about the act of writing, which is its own thing. But directing and producing, which I think relates, writing relates to the actors too, but directing and producing really relate to the actors. So once you have a script that's ready to shoot, or you've got a green light on it, as a director, forget about producing for a moment, but as a director, what is it that you do? Did you storyboard? Do you come at it the same way you did as an actor? How do you come at it?
I love Werner Herzog's quote that storyboards are for pussies. No, I've tried storyboarding. My stick figures are barbaric, and I think for me, and I've only directed stuff that I've written, so I've never taken.
So you've never interpreted somebody else's writing.
Let me think. I did a web series where I kind of did that, but I ended up writing it. So no, I've only directed stuff that I've written.
So it's already sort of meshed into your brain.
It's already meshed into my brain, and the reason I kind of stayed away from storyboarding was more I did not want to limit. You don't know what your location's going to be like. You don't know what it's going to look like, especially I've only done low budget stuff, under 5 million. So at those kind of numbers, I could storyboard and I'm storyboarding an open space and camera angles, but I'm just kind of making it up, and it didn't seem accurate to do it that way, because then I would be forced into a place where I wanted to be a little bit more improvisational in terms of how I staged it, if that makes sense. So I like getting in the space. I like letting the actors kind of get into the sandbox, and then kind of figuring out, I know what shots I need. I know that I need a master. I know I need a close-up. I know I need a three. I know the shots that I need to cut it together, but I didn't want to storyboard that stuff. Again, I don't know enough about camera angles to do it, because I'm not classically trained. When I'm on set, I have a big long lens that gives me a bunch of different looks, so I can kind of talk to my DP, which is super important. Having a great cinematographer relationship to be able to figure out, oh, this is going to make them look like this, and this is kind of an emotion I'm feeling in my head. And quite frankly, a lot of my like the vision that I have for things comes from movies that I've seen. And I can speak in shorthand to a cinematographer if they have a very similar kind of wide taste in movies, and I can say, hey, what about this shot from here? And it's kind of like, we're doing a little Man on Fire homage, and they're like, oh yeah, that's great, and we can go here, and okay. And I really love that part of it. I'm totally prepared on set when I'm directing, 100% prepared. Nobody's waiting for me. I know where I want the camera to go right away, but I also want that sense of collaboration, that sense of we're all kind of in this sandbox together.
What do you prepare a shot list with the DP?
Yeah, always prepare a shot list, so I know what shot I have to get.
So you're not winging it on the set.
No, God, no. I do have a shot list.
But you don't. So in other words, you already answered the question, which is you don't like the storyboard, but you do prepare for what you're going to shoot that day.
100% completely prepared, over prepared. I over prepare for everything. So that when you're doing it, and it goes back to acting, it's like you over prepare so that when you're doing it, it doesn't look like you're doing it effortlessly, hopefully.
Well, that's the
filmmaking.
It's the old adage that, the football coach will spend all week preparing only to have to punt.
Yeah.
You have to prepare and prepare and prepare, but yet you're not going to succeed on every play.
Oh, so. God. Yeah. And then, and I always felt like, and I'm probably wrong on this, but just my feeling, I always felt like storyboarding kind of takes away some spontaneity on something you might find. That if you storyboard it, you wouldn't even be looking, because you're like, all right, I got it, let's go to the next one. As opposed to, you might find something. And I love finding things in a scene that you didn't think of.
Well, that's usually the most exciting thing that happens, is you're finding things that you weren't expecting, and they turn out to be some of the best things in what you're doing.
Yeah, 100%.
All right, so producing and directing notoriously comes with many and various built-in pressures. How do you deal with pressure?
You really have to be resilient. I had somebody tell me when I first kind of started trying to produce stuff that you better have $250,000 in the bank, because you're not going to work and you're not going to get anything made right away. And I got very spoiled on the first thing that I really, really produced, like that I, got the script, developed the script, got it to the star, got it to the investor, and now we're making the movie. It happened really fast. And I got a little bit spoiled, because we went from attaching the star in September to getting the financing at the end of September to filming in November. Like it went crazy fast. Maybe August we started, but it was like within 6 months, the movie was already done. And it was just kind of a perfect storm of things. So I got a little spoiled on that front. But, and I also have had projects that, I've had for 20 years that I've been paying option fees on projects that I'm passionate about. And I still do have, multiple producing projects. On the acting front, I don't chase it anymore. But on the producing and directing front, I do have, 5 or 6 passion projects that I still kind of bang the drum for.
So obviously making movies and TV and commercials, anything with a group effort requires collaboration. What are your thoughts toward the best way to make collaborations work?
Well, if you're not an asset, you're a liability. So, and on the producing front, everyone wants to jump on board, especially if they smell that you're getting close to getting it made. This is a town filled with, people like that, unfortunately. That want
it is unfortunate. There are a lot of people that are taker advantages of.
Yeah. So there's that. And I love collaborating. I never, I'm very straightforward. The person I am right here talking to you is the person I'll be after we hang up. I'm not, I don't put on airs. And so people get what they know what they're getting when they work with me.
So, all right. So, what do you do if you just don't feel like working? How do you keep yourself disciplined? What do you do to push through a day where it's just like, I can't do this today, but you do it anyway?
I don't do it, then I don't work. I'll go golfing or I'll swim.
Even if you're in the middle of a production?
Oh, in the middle of production? No, you can't. No, I thought you meant like just in the
I meant it both ways. But
yeah, you're in production. You don't have that luxury. You're going. I mean, I was producing a movie and I had pneumonia, and I was like, I was gone for a couple hours on set and then right back at it, sick as a dog. You really do not, unless you're dying, and even then you kind of have to figure out a way to get there. You can't. It's so that and that's a lot of stress, and that's a lot of pressure. So you have to be able to handle that, or then you turn to drugs and alcohol.
Is it for you that you're innately a disciplined person that you can just push your way through that?
Yeah. Once I commit, the discipline's easy. And I think people have a real hard time trying to put discipline before commitment, and you're screwed because you have to be committed first. And then the discipline's easy. But if you're not committed, then you're always going to battle discipline. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes total sense. Yeah. If you aren't into it, you're looking for ways out of it.
Yeah. And you got to love it. And yeah.
All right. So you have over time worked with your share of studio executives, production company executives, agents, managers, people in the business that are not going to be on camera, not part of the talent pool, as they call it. Yeah. How do you deal with their notes and their feedback? What do you do when you get stuff from somebody and it's just not helpful or destructive? What do you do?
You got to be a salesman, and you got to be a little bit of a con artist, because you can't, especially if they're the ones writing the check, you have to kind of like, you listen and you kind of like persuade, and unfortunately you're going to lose a lot of battles. You're going to compromise on stuff you don't want to compromise unless you raise the money yourself, you're distributing yourself, unless you're doing all that yourself, you're going to have to compromise. And then there's places where you're going to dig your heels in and just say, no, I'm not doing it. And if this is what you want to do, count me out.
Well, the business, I think, from my perspective, is a series of compromises all the way through.
All the way through.
You're in production. No matter how much money you have, even if you had hundreds of millions of dollars, it's still never enough.
No, never enough. Whether you're making a movie for $500,000 or $50 million, it's never enough.
There's never enough. You always want some more for some other toy or some other special effect or whatever.
And here's the thing, and here's something that I kind of what I like about filmmaking, what I like about independent filmmaking is that I feel like throwing money at something is the easiest solution. I think when you can't do that, you have to figure out a creative way to make something happen. And you know that. We did that together.
Well, we're gonna talk about that in a moment.
Like that's the shit that's really exciting. You're like, okay, we don't have money. All right, we're going into underneath the 5th Street Bridge in the LA River, and we're just gonna guerrilla shoot it around all the homeless people. And I've done that, and that's so much fun. Or you're running from the police and they're trying to catch you to shut you down, and you're trying to stay one step ahead of them.
Well, we had that happen for sure.
Yeah, and I've had it happen a lot of times. I've shot a bunch of movies like that where we didn't pull permits, and we're like, oh no, and now the cameras are so small that now they're savvy to it. But when the little Canon live action cameras came out, it looks like a still camera. Oh no, we're just shooting some stills down here. Well, wait a minute, you got lights, you got 20 people. This guy, you're changing costumes. You're not shooting stills. You're shooting a movie. So but look, that's the kind of stuff. I mean, you want me to tell you about it? We were shooting this segment for this little horror movie I produced, and we were shooting down in Skid Row in LA. And I love it down there at night, just the look of it. There's so much natural lighting down there, and it's just so eerie, and it's just so dark and noir and cool, and you can film without using studio lights because there's so much natural light, and those cameras work really well with no studio lighting. So we're shooting this shot, and all of a sudden a truck comes flying down an alley, and we're in an abandoned warehouse. It was like a produce warehouse, and we don't have permits, and a truck comes flying down the alley, and we captured all this stuff on film, and truck backs up into a loading dock, and the truck's running. You can hear it running. We're trying to do a shot, and then we hear screaming coming out of the truck, and then this woman comes running out of the truck, and we were filming this stuff, and she was ended up being in. There's a portion of the movie where you can see the truck and the woman. Anyways, I don't know what the deal was, but that was so exciting because it just added to the ambiance of this really scary movie we were shooting. So,
Goodness,
we wouldn't have got that if we had permits, I guess is the point.
What do you think is the biggest disaster you've ever been involved in, and how did you find your way out of it?
Oh, I'm not going to use names. I was shooting a movie out of the country, and the executive producer was the money guy, called and wanted to shut production down.
Oh, lovely.
And I said, shut it down. He was basically bluffing. And it was like one of those bluff. If you don't do this, this, and this, I'm shutting it down. And I had just been at the end of my rope, and I was like, you know what? Great. Because what's the worst thing that can happen? I go back home to see my family.
Sure.
So, anyways, yeah. I mean, I've never had like any kind of like life-threatening disaster happen. So these other things, you just kind of work around them.
Right. So let's get into Lucky just a little bit, just for a minute or two. Lucky, this movie that we made, we produced that 20 years ago, if you can believe that.
Yes, I know. Time flies.
Time flies.
Time flies.
And it's as we're recording this today, it's destined to be on streaming fairly soon. We expect.
Yes.
It was a challenging production. There's no question, because we had zero budget. I mean, we shot that thing for about $30,000.
Yep.
And we had very little time. We were shut down by the sheriffs for a whole day because we were flying without a permit.
Yep.
And we were working with a dog for 5 days.
Yes.
Which everybody tells you, don't work with children and animals. So
yes.
What was it like for you as the star of the movie to be dealing with all of those, all that stress and dealing with a dog for 5 days?
We were, the beauty of that movie is that, Sustarsic had been running television shows. He was a showrunner in television, but he wasn't running the production.
No, he certainly wasn't.
We didn't have the experience of running a production. So I think the best thing was that we all kind of went into it. We just were like, F it, let's just do this. Let's just figure it out. And we figured out so much stuff on the fly. Working with the dogs, because I worked so much in commercials, I was used to working with dogs and kids. So I didn't care so much about working with the dog, whether it was the real dog or the mechanical dog that we stole. I should say Jim Ferguson stole it from, I forget what the studio was.
I won't say, but I know.
It was yeah. Anyways, so we got that dog at night because it was in the
we, by the way, I want to be clear about this. We didn't steal anything. We borrowed it for a period of time. It went back.
We borrowed it. I was using the word stole wrong. Yeah, we borrowed it and we gave it back.
It went back.
But we did cast our actual dog based on the fact that we could get the mechanical dog for free.
Of the actual dog, the live dog had a mechanical dog that had been made for another movie.
Yes, but we had the mechanical dog first, and we were like, well, "Where's the?" That's how we did it, Steve. And we went and found what was our dog's name?
Sydney.
Sydney. We went and found Sydney up in the Canyon Country.
Well,
So cast the mechanical dog first.
well, that should be the way everybody casts movie. Cast the mechanical thing first. So we were also dealing with what I think of as one of the most unusual scripts I've ever read. I don't think that's a common or normal script at all. And even to this day, I don't think anybody would ever think I'll produce this.
No, no.
Highly unusual.
They call the authorities.
No kidding. Well, those were some of the jokes. What's in Steve's backyard, Sustarsic's backyard. So what would you say was the most challenging thing about going internal on that character? Because that character was out of his mind, but you couldn't play him out of his mind.
No, you couldn't play him out of his mind. One of the saddest things about finishing that movie is I knew at the end of it, I would never get the chance to say those kind of words again. No. I loved Sustarsic script. And as dark and awful and misogynistic and brutal and sadistic and all the horrible things, it was really funny, as you know. And it was so stinking weird. And look, as a character actor, it's not often somebody's handing you a script to star in. So I was so grateful for that possibility and for meeting Sustarsic and meeting Sustarsic through you. It was just, I never had any trepidations or about how I was going to play this. I knew who this guy was. I knew who he was. I knew how racked with, pain and nuttiness and alcoholism and all that stuff. I just had a real kind of understanding of it when I first read it, and I did lots and lots and lots and lots of homework. I mean, I spent hours and hours and hours imagining those circumstances, so that when we were on, we had 9 days or whatever it was we had, and we couldn't do many takes. We just didn't have the time. I knew that we had to be there.
We did over 420 setups in 9 days.
Yeah, I mean, it's ridiculous.
Ridiculous.
Nobody
does that. Not really. With a dog and a day with 2 nude women, which slows you down.
Yeah. And my shirt.
Say that again?
And my shirt was off, which, to today, I don't think anybody wants to see, including my
wife. So as well, how do I say it? What is it that you want audiences to take away from this movie? What do you think audiences should take away from it?
Man, I don't know, man. It's obvious. It's not an after school special. I don't know.
I want to review one word you used, which is the word misogynistic. And people have called it misogynistic. And to a degree, I think if you look at it one way, it has a lot of misogyny in it because he only goes after women.
Yeah.
But I believe he loves women. That's the thing.
Adores women, worships women.
Exactly. So it's not like he's a woman hater. No. He's a woman lover. He's just very ill.
And he can't have them. That's why. Because he can't have them because of who he is, And it's. I mean, he's an incel. I mean, if we were talking about it today, Mud would be an incel.
That's true. He would be an incel.
Yeah, and in a horribly living this completely unnatural existence fueled with alcohol and regret, and nobody loves Mud. Who loves Mud? Nobody loved him, and that's what humans want. We just want somebody to love us.
No, and he hated himself.
Of course, hated himself, but Mud worshipped women, and couldn't have them, so he was like taking it out on them. It was just, just a really fucked up, sick guy.
Well, it'll be for others to judge more of as it comes out into the world again.
Yeah, we probably wouldn't make it today. I think the world has changed. I certainly wouldn't make it today.
I don't think you could make it today. I don't think it's possible.
I go back and I look at it now and I'm like, God, I was so proud of it then. I look at it now, I'm like, oh my God, this is really bad. It's crazy.
Yeah, well, it's bad in terms of today's mores.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, for sure. I will say my most proudest moment was being in Park City at one of the screenings and sitting in the back of the audience, and these two or three people were walking out saying, "This was absolutely the worst movie I've ever seen." I was so proud of that, Steve.
Well, I don't know if you remember, but in Park City, our very first ever public screening, it was a DVD movie when there had not been DVD movies ever before, and we transferred it to DVD for this festival that we were in, that they wanted it that way.
Right.
And when it got into the player, it only played about 30 minutes in and stopped playing.
Remember that? It was so horrible. I do remember that. Yes.
It was that was a nightmare. I mean, that was just a total nightmare.
Yeah. And our crowning achievement, one more thing on Lucky. Our crowning achievement should be in the warning on the DVD. It says contains scenes of abhorrent behavior, not abhorrent behavior.
Aberrant.
And I never saw that ever to this day. I've never seen that warning on a DVD or a video.
Where's that on our DVD? I don't remember.
On the DVD, read it and look up the word.
Well, I know what that word is. I don't recall seeing it. It's on. Is it when it plays, or is it on the box?
It's on the box.
Huh. Okay, I will take a look.
Warning contains scenes of abhorrent behavior. Maybe that's my autobiography.
It might be both of ours. Well, I've been talking to Mike Emanuel for just a little over an hour, and we're gonna wind this puppy down, this sick puppy down.
Yeah.
In your many experiences over time, can you share with us an oddball, quirky, weird, or offbeat, or just plain funny story from your career?
Yeah, I can tell you how I got my SAG card. Which was such a big deal as a young actor. Well, I wasn't that young. As an actor coming out to California, wanting to be a professional actor, I was doing extra work when I first came out here because I wanted to get on set. I had not much experience being on sets. So I took a job as an extra on a movie called Martians Go Home, starring Rick Dunlop, who's deceased now.
Rick Dunlop.
Rick Dunlop. He was on Make Me Laugh. He had eyeballs that came out of his. He had like these I don't know, prop comic. But Randy Quaid was in the movie, and I was playing a CIA agent, and we were shooting in Woodland Hills. There's a building that kind of looks like the White House, and Randy Quaid's is the president of the country. It's a dreadful movie. But I was an extra for a few days, and I wasn't in SAG yet. I was in AFTRA, but I wasn't in SAG yet. And you had to say something on camera at the time to get into Screen Actors Guild, and then they would Taft-Hartley you in. And it was difficult. It was really hard to get into SAG. So I'm on the set, and I got a scene with Randy Quaid. We're running through like the exterior of the White House. There's these white pillars, and I'm chasing somebody, me and another CIA guy. And as we're running through, I yell, I got him. And they go, cut. All right, tell that guy. Nobody knew you're there. They're like, I'm just the dopey extra. He goes, hey, you're not supposed to say anything. So shut up, do it again, but don't say anything. And I was like, no, I'm saying something. So we run through, and I go, I got him. And he's like, hey, cut. Okay, you can't talk. So we did 3 or 4 takes. And every single take I said it, and every single take he said cut. And then finally they didn't fire me. I was totally expecting to be fired. They were like, all right, let's move on. So flash forward a few months, the DVD comes out, and you don't see my face, by the way. You just see me from the waist down, but you can see my shoes. You can really see my shoes very well. And as I'm watching the DVD, they left my voice in there. You can hear me say, I got him. So I'm like, this is genius. This is a true story, Steve. Have I ever told you this?
No, I don't know this story. So
I was wearing black penny loafers as a CIA agent, which I'm sure they all wear black penny loafers. And I still, I used to wear black penny loafers, and I had, with the pennies. So, and I had the DVD. So I take the penny loafers. I call Screen Actors Guild up. They were on Sunset at the time, Sunset La Brea. So I call them up and I say, hey, I want to, come down. I was in this movie, and I think I should be let into the union because I spoke in this movie and I didn't get. And they're like, all right. So they literally had a screening. I popped the DVD in, and I had my bag. So I freezed on I got him, and I freezed on my shoes because there was a close up of the 2 sets of shoes running. And I opened up the bag and I put my shoes on the counter by where the screening was. And I go, see, that was me talking, and these are my shoes. You can see I was wearing these shoes. And the guy goes, are you out of your mind? He goes, we can't let you in the union just because of that. You bring in those, and those could be anyone's shoes. And then there was another woman there. She was like, no, that's fine. Here's how much it's going to be. Go and pay the whatever. That's how I got into SAG.
I don't know why they'd ever object. It's a very funny story, but I don't know why they'd object. It's just money for them.
It was a true story. So yeah. Marcy, go home. I got him. If you rent the movie, good luck finding it. I don't know where if it exists anymore.
I might actually avoid that. All right. So last question for you today, Mike. Do you have a solid piece of advice or a tip for those who are trying to break into the business and get somewhere, or maybe they're in a little bit and trying to get to that next level? I mean, you've already given us tons of advice, but do you have a solid piece of advice or a tip?
Yeah. Don't be swayed by other people's opinions of you. And that's a really big, stupid blanket statement, but it's so damaging to artists. Kind of the, you just have to really work on your self-reliance and try to get yourself in a place where you don't give a shit whether anyone likes you or doesn't like you, because it doesn't matter ultimately in terms of getting the job. And you better really love it. And if you don't love it, then probably do something else, because it's the good is great. The bad can be really awful and gut-wrenching and soul-sucking and all that stuff. And if you do not come into this business with the heart of a baby and the hide of a rhino, you are effed.
Oof, that's very good. The heart of a baby and the hide of a rhino.
Yep.
That's really good. I've said to people for a long time, it's not a business for the faint of heart or weak of stomach.
Well, there you go. Yeah. That's a great way to put it. Yeah.
It's a really tough business, and you have to really want it, and you have to have tenacity and stick-to-itiveness.
Yeah, and it's a tough business, but with really, I've made the best friends of my life, present company included, I've made because of this business. So that's why the good is phenomenal, and by and large, the people that are in it are good people, and you'll know who those people are and who those people aren't, so it's a tough thing because it's a creative business, but it's show business, it's business. So it's the merging of commerce and art is a very difficult thing and to navigate, to handle. So the more self-reliant you are, the better.
Yeah, I think that's very wise advice. I think that's there's no organization in Los Angeles to help you with your career. You're on your own. You have people that help you a little bit, like agents and managers, but really you're on your own.
Yeah, and throw the book away. Write your own book. Throw the book away. I mean, the book there's lots of great books out there, but there's so many ways to skin the cat.
Yeah,
So.
I think that's very good. Well, Mike Emanuel, this has been a really excellent hour plus on StoryBeat today, and I'm so glad you came on the show and shared things that I knew you were uncomfortable sharing, and I'm so glad that you did.
It was really fun, Steve. So good to chat with you and see you, and hopefully somebody listens to this besides our friends and family and can get something out of it.
And so we've come to the end of today's StoryBeat. If you like this episode, won't you please take a moment to give us a comment, rating, or review on whatever app or platform you're listening to. Your support helps us bring more great StoryBeat episodes to you. StoryBeat is available on all major podcast apps and platforms, including Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, TuneIn, and many others. Until next time, I'm Steve Cuden, and may all your stories be unforgettable.